Tony Bennett is out, Ryan Odom is in, and that means there's going to be a new slowest team in college basketball.
You are Locked On College Basketball, part of the Locked On Podcast Network. Your team every day.
Hey there, what's up? Happy Thursday. Welcome into the Locked On College Basketball Podcast, the only daily national college hoop show out there. I'm your host, Isaac Schade. You're joining me at the place to get your college basketball content every single day. It's all part of the Locked On Podcast Network. Thanks for making us your first listener watch. To get your Thursday going the right way, I want to remind you can catch every episode ad-free on Amazon Music. Special shout out to all the everydayers joining us and all the great members of the Locked On College Basketball Discord. So glad that you are all here. This episode is brought to you by Mazda. Like college basketball players, Mazda sweats every detail because when you make every move count, pulling off the unexpected is only the beginning. Stay tuned later for highlights in this week's Moving the Game Forward. Mazda, move and be moved. Joining me on the show today, our good buddy Leif Thulin, who, oh, by the way, the brand new host of Locked On Arizona, Locked On Wildcats, I guess technically it's called. Leif, congrats. Happy for you. Excited for you to get going on that show.
Thank you. Yeah, it's fun to talk college hoops always, and now I'll have a lot of college hoops in the Big 12 and what should be a very fun season for both the Wildcats and the Big 12 conference. So I'm excited to get going, and we'll be conversating plenty as our teams are kind of preeminent ones in college hoops.
That's absolutely right. Well, today we are doing our 23rd team preview. By the way, if you want to check all the former ones out, there's a playlist that I've linked up in the corner for those of you watching on YouTube, or you can scroll back through and find all of these teams. Today we're doing Virginia. We're talking storylines, new coach, new speed, personnel, starting five predictions, schedule, season predictions, and so much more. So, Leif, let me run the good people through what Virginia did last year under Ron Sanchez, filling in for Tony Bennett. Cavs were 15-17 overall, 8-12 in ACC play, which I think speaks to the weakness of the ACC more than anything else. The ACC regular season, the Cavs were tied for ninth with four other teams, won that tiebreaker, so they were the 9 seed where they lost to Georgia Tech in the second day of the ACC tournament. Didn't make any other postseason action. Isaac McNeely was the leading scorer. He's out the door to Louisville, and so that leading three-point shooter in the conference is gone. And Virginia's going to try to replace that. Leif, there's nowhere else we can start. Last year, Tony Bennett abruptly retires. We learned about it on Thursday, October 17th. Official press conference the next day, Friday the 18th. Leif, Virginia's first regular season game was Wednesday, November 6th, just 19 days after that. Ron Sanchez was the interim. Obviously, he wasn't retained, and now in comes Ryan Odom. Do you like this hire for Virginia?
Well, it's a funny one because of UMBC. Like that's the punchline that hasn't been said. But he orchestrated.
Let's make sure everyone knows that storyline. Would you fill everybody in on that?
Yeah. So the storyline here is UMBC, the first ever 16 beating a 1 was 2018 when Virginia had a 3-loss team entering the postseason. This is a team that was very, very good. It was sophomore year, Ty Jerome, Kyle Guy, DeAndre Hunter. DeAndre Hunter breaks his wrist, which people don't seem to remember in this story. Devon Hall, Isaiah Wilkins, all these guys, they're a really good team. And it was them and Villanova were the big favorites to win the championship that year. Villanova wins it. They were a dominant team, but the one team that was supposed to be able to rival them was Virginia. And Virginia loses by 20 to UMBC, coached by Ryan Odom. Ryan Odom then gets a few different jobs. He bounces around. He's at Utah State. They have success. Everywhere he goes, they have success. He goes to VCU, they have more success. And VCU has been the better team in the Commonwealth than Virginia the last 2 years. And now he's at Virginia, so there is some irony in it. But the greater story is he went to Utah State. They had a great year. He goes to VCU. VCU, it's basketball culture, don't get me wrong. But he was a stalwart of success. And so they're going to play very differently than Tony Bennett did. Ron Sanchez tried implementing changes, but there's Tony Bennett's players, but then a few of them had left. So I just think that was too tough of a situation to inherit a team that was built by one specific coach that plays one specific style of basketball that worked just for him. And so I think this is going to be good for Virginia. I do hesitate to say I'm a believer entirely, but I do think they got a couple pieces in the portal that entail like, hey, they spent money to get these guys. And whereas the guys with Tony Bennett, who is one of the winningest coaches of the past decade, you just didn't feel like they were spending the proper money to get guys that were going to win you basketball games, as opposed to guys who had been in the program prior.
And that's tough, man. That, we see this a lot in this portal era. When a new coach comes in, there's like this reinvigorated life. Suddenly everyone wants to donate, and that allows Ryan Odom to have a lot more money than, as Leif said, than Coach Bennett or Coach Sanchez were working with there. And so really interesting. I mean, the UMBC storyline is phenomenal. I love that he is the architect of the first 16-over-1 upset, and now he's coaching that team. That was the 2018 season or tournament, for those who don't remember. Obviously, Virginia then turns around and wins the championship the next year under Tony Bennett. And here we are now, just 5-6 years later, and Tony Bennett is done and gone. Also, another important storyline for those for us to know about Ryan Odom. For those who don't know, his dad is the great Dave Odom, who coached a long time at Wake Forest, 1981 through 2001. Later coached right after that at South Carolina, 01 to 08. A lot of people might not know he was at ECU for 3 years before that, but in between, Dave Odom was an assistant for Terry Holland at Virginia, 1982 to 1989. So it's just another funny tie-in between Ryan Odom and these. This man grew up in Charlottesville, lots of great stories. And I mean, it's just the full circle nature of both the UMBC stuff and the he grew up here side of it is really, really cool to see him come home. And Leif, like big picture, I think this is not only great for Virginia, I think this long-term is going to be really good for the ACC. Do you agree?
I agree, because and you may not take offense to this, but I think many people would say North Carolina and Duke carried the ACC for the past 15 years. But prior to when John Shire took over and Virginia basically fell apart at that time, Virginia won the most ACC championships. Virginia won the most games in ACC play. Virginia was tied for the most ACC tournament championships, and they won equal amount of national titles to North Carolina and Duke. Oh. Like that's just the way it is from 2012 to 2022.
That's right.
And so I think that was the third horseman for the ACC. Of course, Duke and Carolina are going to get the national notoriety, but the reason that the ACC fared as well as they did in the March Madness and in representation in terms of seeding was because there was a third team that could be a 1 seed, and that was Virginia.
Consistently.
And they lacked that. And so that's what I think is really good. Do I think they get to that same level? Do I think they have the funding that is like a prerequisite to being that good? I don't know. But I think there's going to be optimism because of how well Coach Odom's done everywhere he's gone.
Yeah, like you said earlier, I mean, it's kind of, famously Rick Pitino has done so well his second year at so many schools. Well, this is like a mini Pitino. It was the second year he took UMBC to the tournament. That was when they beat Virginia. The second year at Utah State went to the tournament. Second year at VCU. And so, as you said, man, every stop he's been at, it's been great. For those who are unaware and those who watched all that Tony Bennett era and yawned before they even, before tip-off even happened, get ready. I know Virginia fans are probably already aware of this, but national college basketball fans might not yet be, that it's going to be a new brand of basketball. Leif, no more pack line defense, no more methodical offense. It'll be a more pressure defense, attack. Let me just give the numbers on Virginia and VCU, and then I'd like your take on a different style of play that we can expect to see. Last year, Virginia, 361st in the nation in KenPom adjusted tempo out of 365 teams. And it's not like VCU was setting the world on fire running, but they were 246th, which is a lot faster than Virginia. So, Leif, what do you think people should expect now when they tune in to a Virginia basketball game?
I think it'll be a pretty moderately paced team. I think their personnel is conducive to playing more quickly, not just more quickly than 361st, but more quickly than the average because of what they brought in. Jakari White is a guy who wants to push the ball. He wants to defend and play defense, turn it to offense. Malik Thomas is a guy. I'm not necessarily saying he's going to be racing up and down the court, but he's a high usage guard, and you want to give more possessions to that type of player. Even their bigs, Onyenso from Kansas State, and prior to that, Kentucky, he's a guy who can move pretty well up and down the court. He's a lob threat. And so you look at some of these guys, there's fewer of the lumbering, bone-crushing screensayers like Jack Salt of the way that Virginia used to play. Yeah. I mean, by the way, when you said you yawned when Virginia came, that was my favorite team to watch for years.
Oh, I'm not saying I yawn. Like I'm with you. Like it's like I love a good pitcher's duel in baseball. I love Virginia basketball. I'm saying like a lot of people yawn. Yeah, no. I look forward to it.
I love the blocker mover offense. Kyle Guy flying around the screen, and then you hit the slip pass inside to Diakite. Like that was music to my ears. So, and I'm gonna miss that. And I was starting to miss it even at the end of the Tony Bennett era, because that's just not how college basketball is played anymore. And that's the shame, is you're not going to see some of the unique style, because now everyone's going to play more similarly, because everyone's trying to recruit the same players, and you have to play an alluring style as opposed to the true program builder. So like if I'm going to like slightly go off track here, but I think this is an important note to make about Virginia and just the state of college basketball, you're going to see very few teams that go the opposite direction, that zag when another team zig, or when the country zigs, the way that Virginia did, because they were so slow and they ran such an orchestrated offense, and their approach was, we're going to be slow and we're going to win this game. And that was different. But the real difference is they had these 5 pillars that were like the central recruiting pitch to any player. It's like, look, you're going to come here, you're probably going to redshirt the year no matter how good you are. Then you're going to get really good on defense, and then you're going to have your time to shine on offense. And no matter how good you were, they would end up winning games and be a 1 seed in March. And they'd find a way to win, and they'd have unheralded guys like Malcolm Brogdon did 5 years and was one of the best players in the ACC the last decade or 20 years, honestly. Joe Harris, same idea. And these guys redshirted. London Parentes and guys like that, like Kihei Clark. You look at how they built their team, that's a thing of the past. And it's a real shame the way that NIL and transfer portal both coincided to change the game, because I think both those things in and of themselves are good things. Together, I think it makes the country the same. Like every team's the same now. And so that's the slight aside. The good thing for Virginia fans is now you can play a basketball brand that's going to get you recruits again. And so I think some people will be happy about that. But if I look into like what I loved about college basketball, and I still do love that, I think I'm going to miss what made Tony Bennett's program so special.
And at the national level, that's the beauty of having so many teams, is there's so many different ways of doing it and succeeding. But if you can't build that program year after year after year, which it seems impossible to do now, it's going to make that kind of style impossible and is going to be phased out. And I think consequently why Tony Bennett is not going to be on the sideline at John Paul Jones Arena this year. It's an unfortunate thing, but yes, it will allow for a more attractive brand of basketball in Virginia. Ironically enough, because I started talking about yawning and then you did it again. I literally yawned while you were talking, Leif. So thank you for doing whatever it is in the human body that we just end up yawning when we're talking about it. And I can feel one coming on again. That means we better get to an ad read. No one of consequence is returning for Virginia this year, but the pieces Coach Odom and the staff bring in are certainly enticing. How will it all fit? We'll talk about that in just a second. Right after I tell you about FanDuel, y'all, the NFL season is here, and FanDuel has an offer you don't want to miss. Right now, new customers can bet just $5 and get $300 in bonus bets if you win. That's right. Pick a bet, put down $5, and if it hits, you'll unlock $300 in bonus bets to use all across the app. When you use FanDuel, whether that's parlays, player props, getting in on the action live, it makes watching football even more exciting since you got a little something extra riding on the action. So whether you're a casual fan or maybe you love diving into the stats like Leif and I do, FanDuel makes the game day experience so much better. FanDuel Series, ACC, and other Power 5 regular season conference championship odds for basketball earlier this week. Duke leads the way at plus 155 for the ACC, Louisville at plus 220, UNC at plus 700, NC State 750, Clemson at plus 1900, and these very Virginia Cavaliers at plus 2200. You want to get in on that action? Are you a believer in the Cavs? What are you waiting for? Visit FanDuel.com to download the FanDuel app today and get started. This episode is also brought to you by Square. You need to know that your favorite neighborhood spots run on Square. there's just certain businesses that make the neighborhood feel like home, whether it's the local sports bar packed on game day, that coffee shop that knows your name and your order the second you walk in the door, or that corner deli that's been faithfully serving your community for decades. These are the places that bring people together. Neighborhood businesses thrive, the whole neighborhood thrives. Here's what that looks like. Spending money there doesn't just support the business, it supports the people behind it and the community all around it. Those local spots are what make the neighborhood feel like home. And so many of them run on Square, who is a proud partner of more than 4 million neighborhood businesses all around the world. You can go to square.com/go/lockedoncollege to learn more. But before you do, go support your favorite neighborhood spot. You're going to be happy you did. Square. See you in the neighborhood. Leif, as is often the case in this portal era, when a new staff comes in, you almost have to reset your whole roster. We saw that at Kentucky last year. We saw that at BYU last year. We're seeing it at Virginia this year. Yes, they technically returned 3 players, but none of them played any sort of significant role. Last year, Elijah Gertrude, Des Roberts, and Carter Lang. So critically, who we need to talk about are the 7 portal additions, the 2 higher level freshmen, a 3rd freshman, though, Coach Odom's son, is coming in, and probably the men manning the front court. And this is where I want to start, Leif, is the 2 international prospects coming in. Thijs DeRidder coming over from Belgium, a 6'8", 231-pounder. This dude turns 23 in January, comes in as a junior eligibility-wise. And then Johann Grünloh, a 7'1", 230-pound 8 center coming over from Germany. Leif, what do you make of these 2 international prospects?
I think the most important part is they're not like 18-year-old international prospects.
That's a good word.
And so when you're expecting to duel with Cam Boozer, you're expecting to have matchups with some of the preeminent bigs in the country. I think that the age is an enormous advantage. This is something that Virginia used to cultivate by having players gradually grow. Like Jay Huff was a guy who hardly played, and then all of a sudden he was an all-ACC type of guy by the end of his career. And so this, I don't think he's going to tease DeRidder, and I don't think he's going to be all ACC. I don't think he's going to be the best player on this team even. But I do think he'll be competent, and it's very hard for a guy who's 18 coming over internationally to be so. So I think those are really good additions. They're shrewd moves. And then they also have enormous size in the front court. Like you said, the big fella coming over from Germany is massive, but also Onyeka Onwonsu, I almost called him Onyeka Okongwu, so I ended up.
You got it on Yenso. There we go.
and I caught myself in between 2 different Onyekas.
Right. It's hard, man. There's so many names.
Yeah, and so that was like, oh geez, he's not at USC, but he's enormous. And a couple of years ago on Kentucky, I think they played in 2023 against Kansas State, ironically, who he ended up playing.
That's right.
For next, he ended up impacting that game enormously. He had like 5 blocks because Kentucky was not a very good team, but they had so many good athletes. Now you put that guy in a 22-year-old body as opposed to a 19-year-old one. I think they've got enough front court depth to be good defensively. And my question for them really is, how are they going to shoot the ball? Because Malik Thomas can really go, and Jakari White, I think he has burst, but I don't feel like he's a very good scorer. They lost McNeely, who is, I think, one
led
of the best
ACC in 3-point shooting last year.
Yeah, he's one of the best 2 or 3 shooters in the country, is where I was going to go with it. Like, I think if you put McNeely on just about any team, he's going to be the best shooter on it. And I think you look at a country, you probably say that's top 5 shooter in the country who's gone. And they got to replace that. And the NBA is all threes. College, a little bit less, but a lot of teams are really shooting the 3 a lot now. And so I need to figure out how they're going to do so. They have Dallin Hall in the backcourt, and Dallin Hall is a game manager in a polite way. Like that's a good thing in college basketball, but he's not going to win you ACC games in terms of like with his individual play. And he's more on the ball as well. So I think that what they're lacking is wings. And so there's a lot of pressure on Thijs DeRidder to me.
Yeah, that's a good point, because we'll get to our starting predictions in a minute, but it's like this combination of Malik Thomas, who led the WCC in scoring last year, coming over from San Fran. You mentioned Jakari White from North Dakota State and Sam Lewis from Toledo. It's like those guys feel like they're probably in line to start at the 2 and 3, but who is kind of the main wing out of all of it. And then the other transfers, while we're on that, we can mention Devin Tillis comes over from UC Irvine, and then Martin Carrere follows Coach Odom from VCU. So it's those 7 guys are your transfer portal additions. The others that are going to be involved and will be Chance Mallory, who's a little pint-sized guy, freshman, 5'10" guard, initially committed to Coach Bennett, reopened his commitment, and then recommitted to Virginia. He was 55th in the class per 247 Sports. And I think, there's maybe a world where he is more of a shifty game changer kind of guy, could really challenge Dallin Hall for some minutes there. And then Silas Barksdale, who, 6'9" forward, maybe he gets some run, but I could see a world in which he gets to that redshirt thing that we're so used to at Virginia here, Leif. But do you think Mallory has a chance to be impactful in the backcourt?
I think it's difficult because Malik Thomas is going to have the ball so much.
Yep.
And I also think Jakari White is going to have the ball when Malik Thomas doesn't. So I think Chance Mallory, though a lot of people in Charlottesville really like him, I've heard really good things. I know Justin Anderson, a former wing, he's been really effusive of praise on Twitter for Chance Mallory, having known him for a while. I don't remember their connection, but like you don't see too many former guys that far removed be like, yeah, this is our guy, unless and they rarely are wrong, I should put it. I just think
it's a good way to say it.
I think it's difficult to see a guy who's 5'10" go into the ACC and really dictate play when you have a guy like Malik Thomas who scored 20 a game in college basketball and is going to have the ball at his hands a lot.
But Kihei Clark, no, exactly. That's what all the Virginia fans are chanting. But it's they're not all made the same. So Leif, all of that said, all of that personnel, let's put it together. And I know, we always make this disclaimer. At the end of the day, it's not about who starts. It's about who finishes and plays starters minutes. But this is what everyone wants to know. Who are the first 5 on the court? So as you look at this conglomeration of 7 transfers and 2 freshmen and 2 international players, who are the first 5 on the floor for Coach Ryan Odom?
See, that's a really interesting question because the foreign guys are unknowns to me.
Yeah.
Because I've seen highlights, but that's not enough to really feel. So I'll give you the guarantees from my point of view.
Love it.
You're going to have Malik Thomas. I think you're going to go Jakari White. My guess is he plays over Dallin Hall. I think Dallin Hall is probably the 6th man. I'm going to go DeRidder. And then I think on Yenso. And then as for the 3, I really don't know. Like, I just don't know who's going to play the 3. You could go enormous and have DeRidder play the 3, and you play like 3 big. I just don't see that happening. So I have no confidence. Sam Lewis is a guy that I think many would slot in, but I'm less certain of that. Maybe you go 3 guards and Dallin Hall's the guy, but I'd go Sam Lewis if I were a wagering guy. But I just don't feel confident in that wager.
Yep, love it. The differences I have is I know Dallin Hall was typically coming off the bench at BYU. I'm going to slot him in as the starting 1, which moves Malik Thomas to the 2 and Jakari White to the 3, or in some form and fashion.
And I prefer that. I just don't know if they want to sacrifice size.
Right.
I
and that's the question.
That.
And that's what Sam Lewis adds if he is in the starting lineup, is he has a little bit more size if he's at the 3. So that is that's my caveat as I bring those guys. But looking at that, and then I would, same as you have DeRidder at the 4, and I'm going to go Grünloh instead of Onyenso at the 5. But I think ultimately what we probably want to say is we've talked a mixture of 7 guys there, right? Like, so Leif had Malik Thomas, Jakari White, DeRidder, Onyenso, and Lewis as his starting 5. The guys I add in are Dallin Hall and Grünloh. I feel pretty confident that that's your top 7. Leif, do you feel okay saying that?
Yeah, and I feel confident that if Dallin comes off the bench, he'll play over half the game, though.
Yes,
because Dallin Hall was a starter prior to last year at BYU.
Right.
And even at junctures of last year when BYU took off, he was still in the starting lineup. It was just he was supplanted by what was a really talented roster. But Dallin was a high usage guy at the beginning of his career at BYU. And so this is a guy that I don't think will be intimidated. I just wonder if Coach Odom, if you think back to even his UMBC teams, they didn't have the size, but they played really quickly and kind of defensively pesky guards. For a higher major version would be like West Virginia. I wouldn't say they had Javon Carter necessarily,
right?
But
that style was what they were going.
Yeah, the press Virginia. I would consider Jakari White more similar to the type of guard he's had and employed than a lot of what Dallin Hall does. Dallin Hall is a guard who sets the table, who comes off screens, makes good decisions, and is an improved shooter, but not a dead eye.
Here's what I'm trying to process. I wasn't planning to talk about it, but like, do you think Malik Thomas is the leading scorer on this team? Is he the guy?
I think he's got to be. If he's not, I think something goes dreadfully wrong for this team.
Yep.
Either that or DeRidder is just an unbelievable player that we just don't know.
Which could be. That very well could be. Like, I think a lot of people are maybe thinking that way. But if you could have both of those guys as like a two-headed monster, I think that puts you in a good position there, Leif. All right. Well, understandably, it's an easygoing non-con slate for Coach Odom's first year at Virginia as they try to put these pieces together. But we want to try to figure out how the Cavs are going to handle that and ACC play. Season projections coming up in just a second. Right after I tell you about Mazda, who crafts cars for those who do more than just simply move. Mazda delivers confidence with every ride, with more IIHS Top Safety Pick Plus awards than anybody else as of August 2025. From footwork to breathwork, athletes sweat all the details, and Mazda brings that same level of intentionality to how they craft every model. You can feel that incredible Japanese craftsmanship in every detail, from the metallic accents to the available Nappa leather upholstery. With all-wheel drive standard in every single crossover SUV, you can drive with confidence through almost any season. Because with Mazda, everyday drives feel like anything but, from smooth handling all the way to intuitive controls. Like college basketball players, Mazda sweats every detail because when you make every move count, impossible becomes irrelevant. Mazda, move and be moved. This episode is also brought to you by Game Time. College football is back, and we could not be more excited. The tailgates, the rivalries, all the energy in the stands, there's just nothing like it. But let's be real. Sometimes actually getting tickets can feel like more of a battle than getting the game. Endless lines, hidden fees, the price jumps up when you get to checkout. Nah, that's why I like to use Game Time, the app that gives the advantage back to you, the fans. It's the easiest way to score last-minute tickets at the best prices with no surprise fees. What you see is what you pay. And honestly, it's faster, cheaper, and less stressful than any other way I've bought tickets. And I love that I can find views from the seat right there in the app. Virginia, having a little bit of a good football year here. They're ranked 24th right now. They're at Louisville on Saturday, important ACC game. And right now you can get tickets on Game Time for as cheap as $24. So take the guesswork out of buying college football tickets with Game Time. Download the app, create an account, and use code LOCKEDONCollege for $20 off your first purchase. Again, that's promo code LOCKEDONCollege for $20 off. Terms apply. Swipe, tap, ticket, go. Download Game Time today. Leif, the ACC, as a reminder, has reduced to 18 games this year. That means we get 13 non-con games for Virginia. That'll bump up by one next year when we go to 32 regular season games, but that's where we sit right now. The Cavs have two exhibition games, Thursday, October 16th at Vandy, and then Friday, October 24th against Villanova. That, by the way, October 24th and the 25th, that Saturday, is a loaded college basketball exhibition slate. Leif, it's mostly a lot of bye games for Virginia, if we're being honest. I think that makes sense for, a lot of times we're like, come on, man, do better. But with this team, brand new coach, brand new staff, brand new personnel, I think this is the wise move in year one. The notable high major games, the Greenbrier tip-off. It's funny you just mentioned West Virginia, because this Greenbrier tip-off in West Virginia, they'll play Northwestern on Friday, November 21st, and then on Sunday, the 23rd, against Butler. So again, winnable high major games. The high ticket of the non-con slate is ACC SEC Challenge on Wednesday, December 3rd, where Virginia will be at Texas. That'll be a tough one there. And then the other non-con game of note is actually in the midst of conference play, where on Valentine's Day, Saturday, February 14th, Charlottesville, Virginia will host Ohio State in the Nashville Hoops Showdown. And I said host, and I actually mean it'll be down in Nashville. Super fun there. Outside of that, Leif, it's all bye games. You like the construction of that non-con, or is it too weak even for a new regime?
I mean, I would love, as a lover of basketball and a guy who will consume copious amounts of basketball, that the all games be great. But I totally understand it. Like I tend to be on the more critical side of non-conference schedules. Like last year, I kept begrudging some of the teams that were highly ranked in their schedules, and we would do our rankings, and there was one consistent theme: is the team that didn't play anyone, I ranked low. Like last year, UConn,
Right.
I had them 10th when they were winning against New Hampshire, and then they ended up going to Maui and lost. And so I'm a big believer in getting tested early. However, if you got a new team and new coach and you're in a dominant conference and you want any prayer of making the tournament, you probably want to win some games early and build continuity, build belief. And so I'm more understanding of this one than I would be of a lot of other ACC programs playing that same schedule. But even in Tony Bennett's day, and this is only just because I watched so much of Virginia at their peak, they would play a good schedule, but it wasn't like a schedule you would say, wow, that's a great schedule. It was, they'd play Wisconsin, and Wisconsin was, a 5-6 type of seed in those years. They would play occasionally a Bahamas, but not always. And then they would play a Villanova with the home and home with Jay Wright. And, one of those teams might win a championship one year, and the next, they lose early. But if that game was, 60-58, and then DiVincenzo's going to tap it back in before anyone knows who he is. That was, I think it was 65-63, and he gets a tap back to ruin Ty Jerome's dagger. But great game. But anyway, those are the two games. It was Wisconsin and Villanova, and those are really good games. But most times you'd look at a schedule like that. We've done this already. We've talked about teams that are not as good as those teams were, and you say, well, that's a weak schedule. You just play 2 guys. Let's play 5. And, right now, I think it's becoming more and more important to win these non-conference games. Like Alabama has set the precedent of you can lose, you can take your lumps and still do well in your conference, and you'll get rewarded for playing a difficult schedule. I'll love that every time, but not every team can afford to do that.
That's right. And with Virginia, if they did so, it might just end the season before it even starts. Yeah. So I totally get it. I'm right with you on that, Leaf. Let's move to ACC play, where Virginia, unfortunately, and maybe this is part of that non-con as well, because so much of it is going to be at John Paul Jones Arena. 6 of Virginia's first 9 ACC games are all on the road. And the good news, though, is that means the back half of this slate, 6 of the final 9 are at home. So if they can survive early, they should be in good state. But in that front half, they got to go to NC State, who we think will be better under Will Wade. They got to go to Louisville, to SMU in year 2 in the conference. Thankfully, they don't have to go out west. They host both Cal and Stanford, so that's good. And then in the back half, that one of those 3 road games, they got to go to Duke. They get NC State again. That'll be at home. They get North Carolina at home. So a manageable ACC slate, Leaf, but they just got to get through the slog of that road-heavy front half.
Well, the ACC's got some weak teams, though. You can
fair.
Put together a good winning season by beating the teams you're supposed to beat in the ACC. Because my beloved Stanford Cardinal are not good. Cal's not going to be good.
Right.
And you're going to look at some of the other teams, and they've got significant question marks, more so than Virginia roster-wise, even with all the turnover. I mean, Duke and Louisville, to me, I think are light years ahead of everyone else. I'll eat these words if I end up being wrong. I just don't think it's going to be close. I think Carolina and NC State are 3rd and 4th, and they're in their own grouping right there. And then you get to 5th and 6th, and I think you're going to have a team like Clemson or a team like Miami, and then you're going to have the rest. And I think that's where Virginia is. They're 7th or 8th. But I think they're a distant shout from the rest of the teams, but they're also pretty ahead of teams like Boston College, or I just don't think the ACC's got good depth. There's not these formidable places to go play, and I don't think some of these rosters are all that well constructed. So they could be above 500 in ACC play, but be 6th or 7th.
And that's where the analytics of it comes in again once we start thinking about seeding and other things like that, where it's like, yeah, your record looks good, but there might be a team with a not as shiny record, like Florida. We just did them earlier this week. Their non-con is loaded, man. And so they might have a worse looking record, but it's because they play in the SEC and played a tough non-con and still get a much better seed. So, Leif, all that said, your projected conference finish for Virginia, you think around, what do you say, like 7, 8, 9, somewhere in there?
Yeah, I'd go probably 8th if I had to guess.
Okay. I'm going to go a little bit higher. I for some reason I'm buying into the international front court guys, but that is a big risk I'm taking with that. But I'm going to go 5th or 6th for the ACC finish for the Cavs. So, Leif, that said, what would your projection be for the non-con record, the conference record, and then the total regular season record with those 31 games?
So we got 13 non-conference games. I'm going to go 10-3.
Okay, makes sense to me.
I think they could get to 11-2.
Yep.
I just think that there's going to be some growing pains, so I'll go conservative, and I'll go. I was going to say 11. Oh, they're not. I was going to say 11-9, but they're not playing 20 anymore.
Yeah, it's down to
So
18.
that
Right.
I was doing the math and it's wrong. So I'll go one game above 500 for 18, which makes them 10-8.
10-8. Okay. I like it. I did go with 11-2 in non-con. I think they'll lose at Texas and then Ohio State, but I'm that makes total sense. I wouldn't be shocked at all if they slip up once somewhere in a bye game. That could certainly well be, or in the Greenbrier tip-off against Northwestern and Butler. I went a little better in ACC play, which makes sense with me having a higher spot in the ACC for them. I'm going to go 12-6 for a total record of 23-8 for the Cavs. Leif, let me pose to you a floor and ceiling, and then you push back on it. Floor, it's a hard adjustment with so many new players and staff. The international guys don't adjust quickly enough. Backcourt transfers and freshmen, it just doesn't gel. They drop some non-con games that they shouldn't. 500 ACC record, losing the ACC quarters, and just miss the NCAA tournament altogether. For a ceiling, everything works, man. The international front court pops. Dallin Hall comes in and is just a great facilitator, does everything. The shooters emerge. The Cavs are able to finish third in the ACC. Let's say North Carolina, NC State can't get it together. Virginia pops. I don't see them getting past Duke or Louisville. But again, we're talking ceiling. Maybe they could get to third, get to the ACC semis, get a 5 or 6 seed, and lose in the Sweet 16. That my ceiling, I think, is going to be too rich for your blood, but I'm curious your pushback.
Yeah, I just don't see it because I find it difficult to believe that they end up with the roster they have ahead of a team like NC State, even if NC State and North Carolina aren't as great. Like, I don't think Carolina's roster is that great. I think NC State's going to be pretty solid, but it's also coming from a spot of not making the tournament. But NC State last year, to me, was a better team than Virginia. And then they get Will Wade, they get Darion Williams, they get Jerry Dang, they have all these guys. And then you look at Carolina. So I think it's very difficult to insert themselves within the top 3 or 4, which obviously I know you're saying ceiling, but I almost feel like it's too high.
Yeah.
And then if you were to look at some of the other things that would have to go right, we talked about a 7-man rotation. I don't know who emerges beyond 7.
Yeah.
And if they have any injury, they're pretty thin.
Yep.
And so that concerns me, not to mention I think it's difficult to have your home and homes, like the ones where you go home and away, be some of the better teams in the conference. So they will lose home games. Whereas if you were to get your home games against Cal and Stanford, which they have, but a couple other ones, I'd feel a little more optimistic. I just think if you go to Duke, to Carolina, like you have to, it's very difficult.
And they don't have to go to Carolina. They host Carolina, and one of the home and homes is Virginia Tech. So it's like there is some of that where it's like winnable. But I hear you. I could see a world in which the ceiling, sounds like you would maybe go for a ceiling of like 5th as absolute best case scenario. Is that fair?
Yeah. Well, I mean, here's the question for you: is if they're top 3 through 5, or like you have them 6, does that make the tournament? Like does it take 5-6 teams down for ACC not to make the tournament?
Yeah, that's a really good question. And I do think the ACC is going to be better this year. I projected, I think, 6 ACC teams making it, with those top 2 you mentioned, both Carolina and State. And then I think I had Virginia and then one of like Miami or something of that nature. And so, gosh, it'll be interesting to see. And that said, let's wrap the show here. Tournament projection. First off, is Virginia getting in your mind? Secondly, where?
I don't think they make it.
Okay.
I just think it would be an awesome turnaround if they do. I think they'll end up with a solid record, but not really truly considered for a bubble spot. I think they'll be one of the top seeds in the NIT.
Love it. Okay, good. And I have them somewhere in that similar range. Again, since my projection was slightly higher, this will make sense. I have them in like that 8-9 game, maybe bubbly 10 or 11 going to Dayton, something like that. And but finding something, winning that first game and then losing in the round of 32. That's what I got for Virginia. So I love it. Another team preview down. Again, if you want to go find the whole playlist, you can find it on the YouTube channel. I linked it earlier in the show, and so you can go back and click on that as well. Leif, big thanks to you as always, my friend. Best of luck getting that Arizona show up and going, folks. If you haven't already subscribed to that, go do so you can follow Leif there. And as always, if you haven't subscribed to Locked On College Basketball video and audio, do that. If you haven't joined the Discord, we'd love to have you in there. That link is in the show notes. A great place to chat with us all the time. There was some wild chatter earlier this week. A lot of fun. As always, apologies to the Lawyer family. Cheers to the Wild Popes. Shouts to the McBruins. And until tomorrow, peace.